Well, welcome to this evening to the screening of Dune. Nice to have you all here. Um, on behalf of the ACO, I'd like to say thanks to Warner Brothers for hosting it. And also, this is going out on a podcast in America called The Op. So nice to have everyone here. We've just finished the film. I mean, it's just. I was thinking a good indicator all the way through. I kept having to remind myself to look at the operating because I was like, you just get so taken up in the story. I kept thinking, oh, when I'm asking the questions, keep an eye on the operating. But it's like hard to not just get swept away with watching the film. And I mean, obviously that's a good thing, isn't it? So it's just
That's the whole thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Swept away, hopefully, by the story.
absolutely incredible work. It's brilliant. I'm going to dive right in with the first question. Greg, I know you like to operate a camera, but you felt it instrumental to have an operator, and Jason was your choice. Why have an operator on this film? And Jason, it'd just be great to hear a little bit about that.
So the film set, as everybody in that room probably knows, is a really kind of intricate place. The dynamics between directors, actors, crew. Particularly when you're away from home and you're in a foreign country, the dynamic can be really interesting. And growing up in Australia, where a lot of the time I would be operating. Obviously I can't do sort of the intricate sort of operating that something like Jason can do. But sort of, the one thing I like personally to be is to be is to be near the camera, because I feel like, touching the camera and being in control of the camera can sometimes be the way that I tell a story. I sort of can be a little bit, I sort of think a little bit through the lens, not always say on paper or on, in terms of blocking. I think through the lens and what that sees. So that's generally why, a lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time I do like to sort of, get my hands on that camera, be it in an A camera roll or a B camera, in this case, it was as you could see, a very, very complicated film. And, it was when we eventually went to, Budapest, and sorry, when we went to Jordan and Abu Dhabi, the film really grew in scope and scale. It didn't really become a single couple of characters together. It was really grew in terms of action sequences. So that was kind of the way that we approached the movie. So the way that the timing worked out, Jason could, was able to come on sort of almost towards the end of Budapest and really take the lead and the reins to sort of run, the desert part of the film, which for me was technically, really tricky and really hard. So yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Jason, do you want to talk a bit about that? I know you've got a little bit of story about it, going back to Australia and family time.
Yeah. So Greg, when he first mentioned it to me, I just knew the date. I was like, obviously, unbelievably stoked to be asked, but the dates didn't really work. I was going back to Australia. I was on a job and we were finishing, and I had a trip back to Australia booked. And I hadn't been home for 3 years, and there was stuff going on back there that I had to get back for. And it was the school holidays, and I was taking my family back. And it was just one of those things where it was probably the hardest decision of my life, where I had to really go back home with them and do that, and couldn't cancel the holiday and then also say, oh, by the way, I'm going to go away for 5 months.
Right.
And you're not going to see me, and we're not going to have a really good holiday. So... but yeah, Greg was incredibly understanding and just said, maybe it will work, let's keep in touch, and maybe it'll work, like you come and do some of the desert stuff. So we kept in touch, obviously, and then when I was away, it was like, can you come out to the desert? And then I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then I was like, well, do you want to come to Budapest for a bit? And then so yeah, okay. And then a little bit later, I was like, how quickly can you get out to Budapest? So because we were on holidays, my wife was very relaxed, and she's like, yeah, okay, go on. Go and have fun with your mate. So yeah, it worked out, going from thinking that I would probably miss out to getting an incredible opportunity to go and work on a film as incredible, as amazing as that.
And you'd worked together before?
Yes, yeah, we'd done the Batman together before.
Before that,
Yeah, we'd known each other. We'd known each other quite a while as well. Before that as well. So I hadn't really done a film in London for quite a few years that had had needed, an operator of Jason's caliber, because when you invite someone like Jason on a job, you really want to use his skill, and the films that I had done in London before that kind of didn't really require that. I was doing some of the operating on Rogue One, and as was Gareth, the director. So it was kind of a bit more freeform. So yeah. So Batman was the kind of the first one we worked together at full time. And then yeah, for me it felt like, again, it's all about personality. We'll say, I mean, skill level obviously is integral, but it's like you can't have skill without the right tone that you set on the set. I think that the camera operator really sets a tone for the camera department, and the camera department sets the tone for the shoot. So I think it's a really important pointy end of the crewing puzzle.
How to you both, your relationship and how you work a scene on the day? Just to talk a bit about the triangle between the three of you and with the director. How does that work day to day when you're on set? Just fill us in a bit about that.
I mean, Jason obviously can talk from his perspective, but it really varies. It really varies from director to director, to shot to shot, to scene to scene. There are times that we've fully scouted a scene or a shot out, and the requirements are technical, where it becomes, for all of us really, like we just have to put a camera at a position because we've boarded it and we've rehearsed it in a place. But there are other times in other scenes, like the fight scene, the Fade and Paul fight at the end of the film that you just saw, where that was a real head scratch when it comes to coverage and eye lines, and I remember Jason came in towards the tail end of that whole situation. And that's where, I struggle personally as the DP, the lighting cameraman, and sort of heading up the operating, in situations like that, trying to kind of navigate multiple eye lines, multiple points of view, and multiple angles. So yeah, it's those complicated ones, like simple two-handers, for me are a bit simpler, but it's really like, it's what I've found in situations like that is that, Jason can add so much more value to the ideas that Denis and I had, particularly when they're more complicated. So in that case, it would be variations. On something like the Batman was an interesting one. I mean, I don't know if, Jason, you've spoken much about the Batman, but that was a really interesting film as an operator goes.
It really was, yeah.
Go on, fill us in a little bit.
Well, the Batman was more. It was like, we would joke sometimes. Greg and I would joke like, so today you can only pan, you can't tilt. Like, you're not allowed to, because Matt Reeves was so specific with his frames, and the camera only moved when it had to, story beats, and. So yeah, so there you were very much, and like if people were blocking, your instinct would be to move the camera to find the shot, where it was like, no, we don't do that. We cut and go again. The actors have got to hit their marks, and the framing is precise, like, where the exact, everything is exact, and which again is a sort of another challenge. But it was, there wasn't a loads of camera movement, fight sequences and stuff, only when it absolutely had to, but. Again, like as an operator, you have to, it does, like Greg said, it varies from director to director and job to job. Like some days you do take charge a little bit more, or you can offer stuff up, or other days, you execute. And when you work with people of this caliber, like as an operator, you're there to execute their vision, and you're there to tell their story, basically. And of course, there's when, like in the knife fight, and when there's more going on, you can see things and offer stuff up, and maybe there's another beat that you can get on that setup. But it just depends film to film, and definitely even scene to scene.
I think that one of the really important skills for an operator to have, I think it's actually the same skill that I would think that a DP would have as well. Sometimes it's better just to shut the fuck up. Sometimes it's better not to open your mouth. And I find that too. I run I can have a bit of a loud mouth, and I try really hard not to have a loud mouth, and just sometimes I'm better off just not saying anything, because and it's a really hard thing. It's not something you can learn in a social environment. It's like, how do you say just enough to contribute, but you don't want to add another voice to the mix? Because, on a film set, there's so many different voices. Everyone has an opinion. So sometimes it's about trying to find that time that you just be quiet, and then there are times you need to speak up, and then there are times you really need to speak up, and judging that's a really tough, can be really tough. And I'm learning every shoot that I'm doing, like I'm learning about that process.
I think that's really really good advice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What's your process like choosing equipment and how you move the camera and what you put it on? I know you mentioned the knife fight at the end, which we can talk about, but between the three of you, how do you decide the visual language and the movement of the camera and the device, I guess?
I mean, from my perspective, sorry to butt in, Jace, but like from my perspective, I have generally a distaste for technocranes, and but in that environment, like to be able to track with people quickly, to be able to roll that thing around, it was the most economical tool for us, because we could have done that on track, but then again, often you'd have to either on board, but then you have to lay the board, and then the actor's walking next to the board. Yeah, like it was just a lot more time efficient to use a Technocrane. We had a small. I mean, Jace, can you remember? Was it a 15-footer or 23-footer? I think.
I think it was a 23. Yeah.
Yeah, and we used a Technocrane. But the funny thing is, and again, I kind of always regret it, is that when you're watching a scene like that, on the big screen, and I'm sorry to take the gloss off kind of what you've watched, but there are times that you can feel that it's not a fixed camera, as in it doesn't feel grounded. So I'm all for either camera on a shoulder, and really sort of hunting and gathering and dodging and weaving with the actors, or something that's on a very big piece of equipment, very big, heavy piece of equipment. But on that particular scene, we did use a Technocrane because it was logical. We could move it and get shots really quickly, and it was a massive scene to shoot over a short period. So it was like the most efficient, economical tool for the job. But I still think a dolly would have been better for a lot of those moves. So really, we should have. And again, it's all easy in hindsight to dismiss that. We should have been on a dolly for the moves and a Technocrane for any finding static shots. But yeah, hopefully nobody noticed that, because that means we kind of did the best we could.
Definitely didn't notice it. Go on, what have you got to say?
Yeah, I think I like totally agree. I think sometimes, especially on bigger films, like the thing is, you just put it on the Technocrane and you live on it all day, and a lot of the time it is not the right tool. Like a dolly is better, or you're overcomplicating it. You're throwing three people in, like the guy on the pickle, the guy on the bucket, me, or whoever's on the wheels, and you just, there's three heads moving, trying to get everyone. Whereas if you're just on a dolly, or you're in sync a little bit more, and I think that's a trap. It's a definite trap. Is you just get on the Technocrane and stay there for shots that you really shouldn't be on.
Because the Technocrane does so many things quite well. That's the evil when it comes to Technocrane. And like, I've gone on the record to say that I think the Technocrane is kind of the root of evil when it comes to filmmaking, because it does so many good things. It can be so useful, by the way. Like, I'm not dissing it. It's not like, the Technocrane company's not ever going to hire me a crane again, I hope. But it does so many things really well. That's its problem, is that it does camera moves really well, and it doesn't warrant the time it takes to then go onto a dolly, to bring a dolly up, to lay floor and go on it. It's so close to being great but it's not great. So for fast movement and fast shooting and fast shot gathering, it's great. But when you're really trying to refine it can be tricky. Anyway, it's good for a lot of things, but that's where, we used the Technocrane a lot more on Dune Part 2 than we did on Dune Part 1, because we used the Scorpio crane, which has a automatic compensation, where you can do straight track backs, even though the arms uh, moving off a pivot point. So it can calculate the straight line. So it actually can do some amazing things. And I will say, in fairness to the Technocrane, it did save us a lot of time on a lot of shots that we never would have been able to get in any other way. So even though I'd remembering the bad stuff, it actually did probably 80% of the work that it did on the film was probably the good stuff.
I was going to tell you that on All Quiet, me and James had to convince Ed, the director, to use the Technocrane the whole time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he absolutely hated using it. The same thing, and the scene where he kills the soldier in the crater, I had to beg him to let me use it, and they were like 8-minute takes, and I had the camera on a bungee hanging from the Technocrane, and Ed was like, "Why is Danny using it? Why is Danny using it?" And it's like, it's the same thing. It is good for some things and it's not good for other things, isn't it?
Yeah.
You had the mimic mode. I thought that was good to talk about with the Libra.
Yeah, we use that.
What?
The mimic mode, the handheld mode for the for Libra.
That's really fantastic. Again, I mean, I apologize for sounding so down on the Technocrane, because I'm not actually, but there were times where in the Emperor's throne room, right at the end, near the end, when we're up with Christopher Walken, and I've got the camera on my shoulder, like as in the mimic, and I'm able to kind of talk to Guy, our grip, about framing. And so I'm sitting up there with Chris. The base is down the bottom, but I've got the crane able to move everywhere. That was really useful, and shot hunting and gathering with that thing was really quite amazing, because then I wasn't at the wheels, in a tent away. I was able to kind of move extras and move Florence into the foreground, or do stuff that ordinarily you would do if you had a camera on the shoulder with them. So the Mimic is great for that, because it allows you to be next to the camera, which you could be if you were handheld, but you've got the all the technology behind you of this fantastic kind of stabilized crane. So yeah, I mean, it can be really amazing, and it did save our butts. 85% of the time we used it, I think it was the right tool for the job on us.
Do you want to just explain exactly what it is, just for people listening at home and people here?
Yeah, so the Mimic, instead of being on the wheels and you're operating the wheels like you normally would, the console basically goes, you operate on your shoulder, so it gives you a handheld look. With the console on your shoulder, and either a monitor or an eyepiece, and it just gives you that natural body movement that you get from handheld, but you have the bonus of being on a crane, so you can track smoothly and get into places I guess you couldn't really do. And it was really handy also in the desert as well, like being on the side of these massive sand dunes, and where it's sometimes hard to stand, and you could arm down and get the camera exactly where it needed to be story-wise. So yeah, I mean, it was great. There were some times where it felt a little bit laggy, and following in, like, especially again going back to the knife fight, in fast action beats, you could be just a little bit behind, and it's only like a split second, but it might be enough just to miss a certain move or a certain hit. So there would be sometimes, Greg would say, "Why don't you jump on the wheels for this one?" But yeah, for the most part, it was really good.
And didn't I read where you switch from the monitor to the viewfinder? Is that right?
Yeah. When I operate, I guess because I've always operated off an eyepiece, I find that I'm a better operator off an eyepiece than a monitor. And at first, I was operating off the monitor, and then asked if we could switch it out to an eyepiece, and it just felt like you were part of the camera. You're attached to the camera more with one eye closed, and I found that really helpful.
Okay, cool. Shooting IMAX or 65mm, how does it differ for an operator? How do you approach it? How do you think about it? Like, the larger format. What kind of is your process with that? Lens choice,
Well, that's more for Greg, I guess, the lens choice side of the using IMAX.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you need to be alert to the fact that your images are going to be seen a lot larger than ordinarily. I mean, of course, people are going to be watching it on a iPhone at some point, and they're also, seeing it on smaller screens, like the screen that you guys watched it on. But when you're seeing it on a screen that's 40 foot high or more, 60 foot, I think, in New York, and you have to be careful of movement, and that's the one thing. That's why the Mimic, for example, with the Libra was really useful, because you could dial down the level of bumpiness, and So, normally sort of on a film that's got a smaller screen or even TV, you can afford to be a bit more rock and roll and reportage. But what we found on June Part One was that if we started to get too rock and roll, that actually the audience would just get a bit sick, or we did anyway during our tests. So for me, when we were operating, when I was doing any handheld stuff, I was always about centering the gravity on the shoulder, really pushing it down to the ground, and not being loose with it, like not holding it with your arms, like getting the weight here and really kind of tucking it in, because it just felt like he wanted to not. He didn't want any of the high frequency movement. That would kill you in the IMAX.
Yeah, no, it's exactly the same. It's always in the back of your mind that you're going to be on a massive screen. So you're always trying to be as smooth and as possible, but yeah, even extra more carefully knowing that it is going to be such a big screen.
Do you want to talk about the that opening shot that you were talking? Because obviously I saw it, paid attention to it today. It's a beautiful shot, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just like that opening 1-0, the first time you see Timothy in the film, and it was such a, everyone, especially as an operator, you love a oneer, but when it enhances the story like that did, and we were again on a crane, Techno crane was down on the side of the sand dune, and you see Timothy, and especially in the IMAX, just such a big close-up to see him, and then it develops on to the rest of the characters to see Chani, and then following some of the Fremen down to the bodies, and like that is just, it's all sort of rhythm and timing. But we were lucky. I think it was the day before, Greg, we rehearsed it for quite a few hours just to get all the beats and knowing exactly where we needed to be.
Yeah, we did. We rehearsed it on the sand dune, and we had to park the crane at the top of the sand dune. Obviously, you can't park it in the middle of a sand dune. It's impossible to drive it down. So we had to get a long enough arm to make sure that we could reach far enough down that they were sort of halfway. Anyway, there was a few logistical nightmares, but we actually practiced it well in advance in Budapest. We practiced it first with the iPhone, then we went to a mound in Budapest, and we just practiced the theory of it just to make sure that it would work. And then, yeah, we had a day in advance with the actors, because the reality of those scenes, and I'm hoping nobody ever notices the fact that the continuity between light and shadow was pretty good, right? I'm not going to blow our own trumpet when it comes to that, but they're pretty much, when in reverse, we're in sun and shade, which if you're shooting next to a rock in near winter, there are shadow and sun issues, within hours of each other. So getting continuity was really hard. So we photogrammetried all the locations. There was about 12 or 13 locations that made up that sequence, and we photogrammetried all of them and did light studies on all of them and set specific times that we could shoot that. Like that might have been from 8:43 till about 9:52 that we could have shot that, and we were that specific. So we couldn't, at 9:43, we couldn't be talking about the shot or discussing the motivation of the characters. You know what I mean? That was going to be, that was going to bonus. So we did all of the legwork technically in advance and did the rehearsal, so that when the sun just hit them and was creating enough light behind them, we could start rolling.
I mean, I was looking out for it because obviously me and Jason had spoken about it, and I was watching it, so I was waiting for it, and I mean, it's beautiful timing. Like, it is a great shot. Really, I mean, you must be chuffed with it.
Yeah, I just like the way to see those, those sort of main characters again for the first time in the movie. Like, it was really cool. It was a good way to set it up.
Yeah, I think that the again, it was, as I said, it was very much a head scratch, that whole sequence, to try and get it all matching, because none of those locations are even close to each other. They're all like an hour drive from each other. I mean, and the irony is that Denis wrote that scene with one location in mind, and it was a location in Part One where, after they crash the little yellow ornithopter, they run towards a rock formation. They run across and they run up, and that's where he based it in his brain when he was writing it. He's like, yeah, it can be all there, and he based it all on that. And then we went back there, and none of it worked there, nothing, ironically. So we had to find 12 or 13 other locations to set the whole thing in.
Have you got a scene that anything in particular before I throw it out to the Q&A? Have you got anything that you'd like to talk? Oh, one question I was going to ask you is about the complexities of shooting in the desert. I know I've read about it, but just a little bit about that, about building platforms, Steadicam, handheld, all of that. Do you want to fill us in?
We had, I mean, sorry to butt in, Jason, but let me just say, like, we had the most amazing grip crew. If anyone gets to work with Guy Micheletti as a grip, he's South African grip who has been living in America for a while. Like he as far as gripping goes, basically is the epitome of the type of grip that you need in those environments. He doesn't have just the camera on his mind. He's very much, he and his crew built stairs and steps to locations, which a lot of the time is a location job. But he took the initiative. He knew we had to be at a certain place. We chose a new location for tomorrow's work, and he sent his guys, and they built stairs and handrails and decks, and I mean, it was quite an effort on his behalf. So yeah, I mean that to me, he needs a massive shout out for getting us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was incredible, the support, and nothing was a problem. If you needed to be here, it was done. It was incredible job. But yeah, things can go wrong, obviously, in the desert as well. There was one day in particular that stood out. We were going to do a Steadicam walk and talk through very rocky terrain. I was hard mounted on a rickshaw, and we were rehearsing it. It was just after they see Paul finds Gurney, and they're walking through the ravine, and we were rehearsing. And during the rehearsal, the pin in my Steadicam arm snapped. And luckily, Greig was next to me. We both sort of caught the camera, but the arm was it couldn't be fixed. And it was one of those things. It was Sod's Law, where we were the furthest away, the deepest in the desert we could be. We were like 2 hours away from one of the base camps, and obviously you're horrified because you can't do anything about it. But you're also like, am I going to be the reason here that you're going to hold up an entire film shoot? And it's quite embarrassing, when things can go wrong.
You feel about that big?
You absolutely do, yeah. But luckily, it was just one of those things that we tried it handheld, and it worked. Like for the story, it was as I hadn't seen the film, and Greg and I were talking about it, and he said, "Mate, it works really well for the story because it's they were building up, talking about war, and when I saw it, I was like, at first, like, oh God, it's just going to be really bad handheld. But it just worked perfectly for the story. Again, like you say, like I think the key of any good operating is you don't notice it. Like it shouldn't take away from the story. But I think on this, chance, it enhanced the story, and it was a lucky accident, I guess.
It's funny because it is the type of thing that from an ego perspective, I kick myself and go, well, why didn't I have the idea to do that anyway? Because it was better. It was better to be handheld than to be Steadicam. But again, the logical part of your brain kicks in and you go, well, we should be Steadicam because it's IMAX. But and then you go, well, maybe handheld's too bumpy. But I mean, listen, again, I don't want to blow hot wind up anyone's butt, but I mean, it's freaking good operating. For walking backwards in sand, I don't know. It's the steadiest handheld. It's the most consistent handheld that I've ever seen. But actually, what it is, it's the best. It was the best way to do that scene. So I think it's nature's way. I mean, if we want to get all spiritual about it, I mean, I think it was nature's way of kind of going, nah, man, you got to do this handheld. This is the way you have to do this scene. So yeah, we were forced into doing it, and it was better. It was better.
It's really good when you get happy accidents, isn't it? Is, like you go away and you're like, yeah,
thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah, it was one of those. Thank God that worked.
I'm just going to throw Q&A out to the audience, maybe like 3 or 4 questions, just because we don't want to be here till the end of the night. So I'll pass a microphone out. Who has anyone got the first question? So I think that's Dan. We're blinded by the light down there. We're just passing the microphone, Greg.
Probably been asked about this quite a bit, but so sorry if it's an obvious question, but going to the infrared parts seems that you did. I'm really interested in, Greg, where you got that idea from, because it's genius. And also, how, for the operating side of things, how it changed things for you, Jason.
Where did I get the idea from? Well, I've been mucking around with my first digital film was Zero Dark 30 back in 2012, I think. And what we discovered was that the night vision goggles respond to infrared. So you can actually shine infrared, like from a security camera off a security camera or a security light, and it will illuminate the goggles and illuminate the image in the goggles. And so we would light some of the scenes on Zero Dark with infrared light, which so you could shoot with two cameras. You could shoot with a normal camera, and you could shoot with an infrared with a night vision goggle. So we could do two things at the same time. And so I thought, well, that's a really cool thing to play with. And eventually, if we figured out that we could pull the glass out of the array and we could see infrared and then we could block anyway. So over the course of a few years, I was experimenting. On Rogue One, we did some visual effects with IR because we shot some face replacement on Rogue One. And again, whatever you think of that is kind of irrelevant for this. But what it did do was I was lighting them a bit darker because that was the film. And instead of having to overlight them so that the VFX company could see everything, I just shot infrared with another camera and they could see all the dots on the face, which I thought was pretty cool that one camera could not see it and one camera could see it. Look, this is a lot long. I'll short the story, but during the Batman, I was going to shoot some of the billboard stuff on Gotham in Gotham Square Gardens, like do a fashion video or fashion film with infrared because it looks so weird. And you get some really weird, beautiful looking model with doing something really interesting in infrared. I thought that'd be a really cool fashion piece, but we never got around to it. So when this came up, Denise said, "Let's shoot black and white," and he explained why he thought black and white might be interesting. And I like black and white, I do, and I'm not dissing it, but I feel like sometimes it's a crutch. Aesthetically, it can sometimes be, you do it for the wrong reasons. And I didn't think this was the wrong reason, but what I thought was the right reason was to show the fact that there was no color coming from this particular sun. That's where infrared came in. So I was like, let's test it. And so we did, and it was cool. And then Austin Butler came in and did his hair and makeup test. We shot him with it, and we all just went, we'd be idiots not to shoot this guy in infrared.
I mean, it looks beautiful. When I was watching it today, it just is an incredible.
I mean, how good does Leah Sadu look as well? I mean, we didn't do the test on her, but when she came in and we shot her with IR, I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
The whole scene is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Right to the end of it. It's just beautiful. I think you weren't. Did you say you weren't there at that
I
point?
wasn't there for that bit. No, Greg operated, but it's the same sort of cameras. Greg, the operating was no different, right?
Yeah, we used a Ronin. Guy Micheletti handheld the Ronin, and I operated the Ronin because we wanted to keep. It was on sand, and I didn't want to be on Steadicam, and it wasn't Technicrane. It had to be handheld. So it was me on the wheels, him holding the Ronin, which meant, but again, it was trying to keep literal and lateral moves, not weavy, not sort of, not weavy stuff. So tried to think like a dolly. My brief to Guy was think like a dolly, think like a dolly, think like a dolly. Go forwards and back.
Thank you for that. That's brilliant. Have we got another question? Maybe two more. Go on.
There are a lot of extreme close-ups, and when you were doing that and operating, was a lot of that on Technocranes then? Because it must have been quite hard to be that close, but still.
I don't think we did that many close-ups on the Technocrane. That worries me about having a bit of kit that weighs 3 tons that far from someone's face.
It worries
I don't
me
know.
as well, that's why I asked.
Yeah, it worries me to do that because I've seen these things jump. Thankfully, touch wood, no one's been in front of it when it has jumped, but they do jump. So that's why, I mean, it wasn't like we didn't do. I guess in the fight we did some of the close-ups on that crane, didn't we, Jace? So
yeah,
it wasn't. We didn't set out to do that. Put it that way. If it was on the camera and it happened to be there and we wanted to be closer, maybe we did it. But I do recall kind of continually saying to to Guy, just don't slip on that thing, mate. Don't, because that's gonna be a end of the day, end of the game for us.
One more question, maybe? No, anyone? All right then. Oh God, one more, last one.
So, Jason,
Hang on, wait for the microphone because we're recording it at home. All of this will be cut out. It will be seamless.
So I'd just love to hear you talk about the ratio between Steadicam, handheld, frame and mimic on the dolly, and then how you cope, especially in the desert with the heat, and just make yourself sure you've got energy to continue for the shoot.
Yeah, I guess I couldn't really put a figure on the ratio of it. It was like we were in the desert, especially quite a lot of handheld, like sort of regular handheld, and on the cranes quite a bit. There was some Steadicam when the arm wasn't snapped. But yeah, I think it was, like you have to look after yourself, but there's enough people, good people around you. And like Greg said, Guy would build these platforms, and there was so many people there and it's so well planned, to make your life easier. It's not like if you're out a one-man band out there all day in the heat. It's not that, there's such a good team around you to help physically get you through it.
The good thing, what production did realize too, first of all, we weren't shooting in the heat of summer, right? So we were in November, which is still freaking hot, right? So it's still beyond 40 every day. But the days we deliberately had to make the sort of the main parts of the days deliberately shorter, 8 till sort of 3:30. So we had to, because we were there for over a month, and you couldn't do 12-hour days. A few of us at the beginning and end of a day, we'd sometimes go and do some splinter unit stuff just with a few of us, just to do some sunrises and sunsets. But but for the majority of the day, like, it was relatively short. It wasn't easy, by the way. Just because it was a shorter day doesn't mean it was easy. Like, we were in the middle of the desert, as far from civilization as you could get, 2.5, 3 hours. So it was the middle of the desert. So
yeah, it was physically tough, definitely. Yeah, it was. And walking around on sand, you know what that's like without equipment. And so, yeah, it was a test, but then you saw these incredible sunrises and, sunsets and the light changing. And so that the environment also hinders you, but it helps you as well, yeah, totally.
Actually, one question I had is, how are you getting these technocranes up and down sand dunes? Is that a silly question, or is it kind of?
I think it's a great question.
no, it's a great question.
If you get like a, I don't know, 25-footer up that sand dune, that's going to take an hour or something, maybe less, but it's a big job, I imagine.
So, well, it varied. We had a motion base, didn't we, Jason? We had like the ARRI Gator or whatever that's called, and so that would drive. I think we had the 45-footer on that. Is that right, Jace? But again, we had
50, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a few actually, but they were all on wheels. They were all drivable. So the reality was we did not get them up sand dunes that were like that. We couldn't, and because it would fall. So that's why we had to pick our sand dunes really carefully. We had to find sand dunes that they'd built roads next to, and we had to go up and over them, like with the arm. We had to sort of, it really, a lot of the location choices were based on the direction of the sand dune, where it relates to the sun, and if we could get a bit of kit there, So it was one of the many challenges that we found, and particularly, the sandworm riding, for example. Like, that was one that was really interesting because there was a real, like, one side of it was in shadow and one side was in sun, and that's the way it had to be, because the worm comes in the sun, goes out in the shade, which meant that one side needed to be in shade and one side needed to be in sun, which sounds like a really easy thing to find, but it was really hard in November. And I won't go into why. It's just the way the prevailing wind was, and the sun stays in the south most of the day, if not all of the day. So it's really hard to get a shadowed side. Whereas if you're doing it in the middle of summer, it'd be a lot easier. So we actually had to build a couple of sand dunes ourselves. Like, we had to physically put sand dunes together in the correct direction to have one side in shadow and one side in sun. And then also there was the sand dune that collapses that he falls into to then jump on the sandworm. And that was built, and the special effects department pulled, massive bits of concrete piping out so that as he's running along, the whole thing starts collapsing and he falls. So it's a good question because it was very hard to shoot on sand dunes, and particularly at the top of sand dunes. And we couldn't get cranes really up there very easily.
I wanted to ask, I'll ask the last question. I was just wondering the ratio of how often you shoot, like single camera, 2 cameras, 3 cameras, how that's decided. How often are you shooting together side by side? I'll talk a bit about that maybe.
Yeah, well, we didn't do a lot of 2 camera at all. A lot of it was single camera. I can't really think of that many situations where we did shoot 2 cameras. Do you, Greg?
No, I mean, Denis likes single cameras. There were some stunts, probably, where, when the collapsing sand dune, we did a couple of cameras on. For the most part, we were single camera. And that's what I love about Denis, is he doesn't try and kind of, mop it up. He really banks on a shot, and when you start to put in other cameras, he starts to get a little bit uptight, which is a good thing because it means you can concentrate on every image by itself. So yeah, there might have been a couple of times during that fight that we did a couple of cameras, but no, for the most part, it was kind of single camera, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a great answer to end on, because it's just beautiful to shoot single camera, because you can be really selfish and always go for the right shot.
Yeah.
Nice and controlled.
All right, well, I'd like to say thanks for the ACO. Thanks for joining us, Greg. Really, really, really appreciate it. And thanks to Warner Brothers for hosting us and letting us be here. And thanks to Jason. And we're looking forward to part 3. I can't wait. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys. Thanks for having us.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.